He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
How big is his hole?
The average age is 49 years old. Okay, Boomer.
Young and the vibrant versus the old and the boring.
Yes, well, on the whip, the government's response to the unfolding Middle East escalation, weak-kneed or pragmatic. And Wayne Brown says he'll be telling the government what Aucklanders want, not the other way round. And it costs money to make those maps. And media independence in the gun as Police Minister criticises TVNZ for not reporting the lower violent crime stats, instead reporting the rise of gangs. And most Kiwis oppose the idea of joining Australia, poll shows. What are they on? What's the downside? With me this evening, Holly Bennett, Director of the Uffie Group, former Senior Advisor to Paul Goldsmith. Tēnā koe, Holly. It's great to have you, as always, on the panel.
Kia ora.
On the web. And Corin, Dann, a morning report host, and of course, always a pleasure to have Corin on. Kia ora,
Lovely
Corin.
to be here. Kia ora, everybody.
And Holly and Corin are joined by former Wellington Central MP and former Minister Marian Hobbs. Marian, wonderful to have you on the show.
Thanks, love. Kia ora, everybody.
Kia ora, kia ora. All right, Marian Hobbs, we have Holly Bennett and Corin Dann. And as always, we kick off with our weekly whip quiz. And this is for the listeners, so have a close listen. What former government minister was also a quiz show host on shows like It's Academic? Have a little listen.
Which word beginning with O is the general term for any living creature or plant?
Orgasm.
Correct.
No, it wasn't correct. It was far from it was far from correct.
Wasn't expecting that.
No. Gosh, it's got all of us, hasn't it? Anyway, question is, who was the politician? There you go. Who was that politician? All right. Now, you are on the whip and straight to this. On tonight, pressure mounting for New Zealand to clarify its stance on the US-Israel attack on Iran. The Prime Minister has fumbled his words several times this week, going as far as saying that New Zealand would support any actions, quote-unquote, to stop Iran having nuclear weapons. He had to walk back on that and other statements, but the government's official stance so far has drawn criticism from all corners, including Phil Goff, who called it servile and silent. Meanwhile, the left was adamant in its condemnation of the US-Israel attack in Parliament yesterday.
To invade another country just because they do not like their leader is to put us and certainly the world in a dangerous and volatile position.
There is no evidence that these attacks were a necessary act of self-defence.
There is never an excuse or justification for bombing innocent girls while they are learning at school.
So quite a response. Let's start with you first, Marian, actually. I mean, your response to the government's stance taken thus far.
Well, I thought it demonstrated that the Prime Minister in particular didn't have any understanding or depth or knowledge of history. The reason that we have the United Nations, the reason that we want to live in a world that is governed by international law rather than a world where might is right is because we are a small nation. That's what Peter Fraser, PM at the end of the war, went out or during the war actually, World War II, went out and fought for in the design of the United Nations. He opposed the veto. He wanted collective security and he wanted a voice for small nations. And the way we're muttering the waters, it looks as though we're toadying up to the bully. I really dislike it.
Holly, what's your assessment of Luxon's communications on this? I mean, are you empathetic to the tightrope the government surely is walking on this? We are a small country, and what do you make of what Marian Hobbs just said also?
I think I am empathetic to some degree, and I'd say that because these are very hard situations. I've heard government ministers say again and again on this matter, we don't know all the facts, and I have to give some credence to that because when it comes to foreign affairs, there's often things that are happening in intelligence that we don't know. But what I would say in this regard, we have a right to know, and politicians calling for us to ask the question, why was it happen? What was the information is important. And I just add this. I'm a pacifist at heart. I don't really believe in war. And so one of these things that's very hard generationally, as Marian points out, is it's not something I've really grew up with. It's not really a thing that I know much about. So it's very hard for me to make comment on things that I haven't really had wartime experience.
That's a pretty fair point, Corin, actually. It's something fairly new that a younger generation, they haven't grown up with this, but I can recall actually some of these very same questions were raised in the invasion of Iraq.
Yeah, absolutely. And Helen Clark, of course, famously at the time made a very strong decision, history has shown, to not support that war. I mean, look at the UK. They did support it, and they arguably are still dealing with repercussions from that right through to today. I would just look at this from the political perspective in terms of the management of around it, because I was the first, had the first go at the Prime Minister on Monday morning and asked the obvious question, what is our position? Do we support this? And obviously I was surprised that he didn't want to answer that question, and he sort of got, I had 4 or 5 goes at it, and he didn't seem to want to answer that. And the reason obviously is because it is they've taken a fairly, fence-sitting, nuanced position where they don't want to come out explicitly and say that it's a breach of international law, even if it looks like it might be. So they don't want to say that, but at the same time, they're not offering this full support that in the language that was used by Australia, although the Prime Minister did say in the end that our position is similar to Australia. So it's a difficult, nuanced position to articulate. The problem he had was the difficulty he had articulating that well. And that's where I think the problem started. And, Winston Peters has arguably performed better in trying to explain that position. Whether you like it or not, that's different. But in terms of the management of explaining it, it wasn't good.
Well, away from the articulation, Marian, but to that point, can you not appreciate perhaps the dance the present government has to do around this very unique individual, Donald Trump?
Yes, it is Donald Trump, but there have been other people, not quite as crazy as Donald Trump, but there have been other times when we've been really pressured. And I can remember when the French blew up the Rainbow Warrior in Auckland, and there were French demonstrations against us when we caught the people and put them on that island somewhere in the Pacific. All the details fade away from my mind, but there was really pressure on us to let it all go, to pass under, to forgive the French, because there was an argument about our lamb trade. So we always have this thing about being a small nation, a nation that has to trade to survive, and we have to give away our morals. No thanks. I know I'm 78, but I'm still of the age that wants to kayak around an incoming nuclear submarine or whatever into a harbour, because I want us to remain staunch in our values. And listen, dearest person, just listen. Think about all the small islands in the Pacific. Think about other small countries. Well, they're not small in terms of their population, but in terms of their pressure, who would love to work together. And I have been in that situation in different UN meetings, working with smaller countries, and it's really a positive feeling being able to put up to the big powers, hey, this is our perspective from this part of the world. And unless we are able to do that, what's the point? I've never liked being bullied, never responded.
You are with the whip now, turning to the US and Donald Trump's position on this. For all his talk of Nobel Peace Prizes, the US president has become fixated on conflict. There have been ominous words from Donald Trump all week, including this afternoon. The big one is coming soon. Now, Iranian New Zealander Donna Miles-Mojab said on the panel last night the future is not looking bright for her country.
This is going to be a prolonged war. It's going to end up in the destruction of our country, and it's not going to bring liberal democracy. I am concerned about the future of Iran, and I'm concerned about what will come next. Iran is very much in danger of becoming a failed state.
there seems to be no sign of slowing down, Holly. I mean, the big one's coming soon. I mean, are you concerned? What could the next month or so look like in the region?
I mean, this breaks my heart listening to that kōrero. She's talking about where she's from. This is really important. We can't just sit down here and pretend it's not something that we're far away from and we can't have a view. And this does concern me insofar as the way it's been done, what the purpose it's trying to serve. If it does not get the outcome that they are seeking, what was it for? Loss of life yet again, destruction of a country. What are we doing?
Corin, the other issue is, and the New York Times has a long article about this, just what is Donald Trump's end game in the end?
Oh, I think one of the most concerning elements about this has been the shifting sands of what exactly the justification was for this. Marco Rubio initially said they had to strike because Israel was going to do it, and if they didn't, they would have got hit. And so that now seems to have shifted because of Trump this morning. The lack of a sense that there is a plan. I'll tell you that might have been the New York Times, but there was one. I think what is emerging here is that Donald Trump, after Venezuela, where he was able to go in and take out the leader Maduro very successfully and then didn't actually change the regime. The same people are there, but presumably now they'll be more compliant for him because he's demonstrated he can take you out at any point. It feels to me a similar strategy here in Iran where he's gone and he's decided that he can remove the leadership. He kind of talked about regime change and the idea that Iranians would hopefully rise up and throw off what is obviously a terrible regime, but I have serious doubt as to whether that will happen. He will, when the pain of markets and of the Straits of Hormuz being closed becomes too great, he will withdraw whether there is a regime change or not.
Right. What's interesting also, Marian Hobbs, is his support base at home. We talked about to the panel with someone from the US Studies Centre, and what was interesting about this is that a large percentage of Republicans do not support his foreign intervention strategy.
Yeah, that's correct. Well, yes, I've heard the same thing. And they're very cynical about him too. And it seems to me, actually, if you compare both them, Netanyahu and Trump, Trump was probably avoiding tariffs was a big thing last week, wasn't it? Supreme Court came out and ruled 6-3 against his legality of his tariffs. The polls are shocking. And even the news that's coming through tonight, this afternoon, has shown some really interesting stuff in Texas. And then, of course, we've got Blessed Epstein. Well, I don't think blessed in front of Epstein is quite the appropriate word, but it's that all those things that I'm sure he wanted to distract against. And I want to make this comment. Where's the news about Gaza? What the hell is happening in Gaza at the moment? Almost in the middle of a war zone, and I never hear it mentioned. And I find that kind of, which was what was hanging around the neck of Netanyahu.
Interesting stuff, The Whip, with Marian Hobbs, Holly Bennett and Corin, Dann. A lot of feedback, actually, appreciate that. And we'll try and read some. I agree with Marian, Helen, Chris H. Philomatum, we must continue to stand, push back, show our integrity and values, says Chrissy in Christchurch. But to this, now, there are questions over possible editorial interference at TVNZ after Broadcasting Minister Paul Goldsmith spoke to a One News journalist and the chair of the TVNZ board about a story he did not like. One News aired a story last week showing that the number of gang members outnumbered the number of police officers. On the same day, the latest crime and victim survey indicated a sharp drop in violent crime in the year to October 2025, which TVNZ made no mention of until a few days later. And Chris Hipkins says that raises questions.
If any member of the Television New Zealand board has been involved in Television New Zealand's decision to run an additional story last night, Television New Zealand needs to be very upfront with the New Zealand public about that, and that member of the board needs to resign immediately.
Okay, so this story happened today, in fact, not that long ago. Marian Hobbs, you were a former broadcasting minister.
Yeah, for
Paul
my sins.
For your sins, but nonetheless you were. Paul Goldsmith said there's nothing to see here. He was just providing regular feedback on a story to a journo and the TVNZ board chair. Do you agree?
No. The no chair ever came to me and said that they were worried, and no instructions were given by me to them about what stories to cover. We had lots of arguments in the broadcasting portfolio, but it wasn't about what was on the news. It was more about funding. I'm the daughter of a journalist. I know how powerful it is and how right it is to actually tell the truth and to tell it fearlessly, and to get as many points of view as possible around a certain topic so that we are all informed. I live by it.
What's wrong with just a gentle phone call, heads up? Hey.
No. It's pressure.
Straight
it's
up.
bullying.
We'll come to you soon, Holly, but Corin Dann, Morning Report, did run the story on the lower crime stats. What's your general view of this story around independence?
Well, editorial independence is absolutely fundamental. Look, it's not uncommon as for a political editor to be, for a politician to complain about a story. It's the nature of the beast, because inevitably political journalists are going to run stories which upset politicians. It's not unreasonable for political editors and political teams to hear those complaints. They can then make their own editorial decision as to what they do. Mistakes are made. Sometimes the facts are wrong. You need to fix them. That's perfectly normal. Then there is the issue of you can make a decision then as the editorial group to fix it. You can have a balance of coverage. Now, in this instance, I don't know all the details around this one. It may have been that
it's developing, isn't it?
They may have been that they could have included the crime stats in the story that Benedict Collins originally did on the gang figures, and then maybe there might not have been an issue. But TVNZ, and I think TVNZ has acknowledged that,
yes,
and that's a perfectly normal process. The other stuff, I don't know.
Well, Holly, you have worked with Paul Goldsmith, so it depends on how much you want to go into this. But in terms of the weighting of a story, should they have gone with the story or not? What's your take on this?
I think it's really important that we be fair to the minister involved in this, because I actually don't think it was the broadcasting minister that had a problem with the story. I actually think it was the police minister, Mark Mitchell.
Yes, he wrote a strong worded Facebook post, right?
Correct. And in the introduction, it kind of sounded like the broadcasting minister was the minister with the problem, and I actually don't think that was true, because when we actually think about the facts of the story, fallen victims of violent crime versus rising gang members, both of those things can be true at the same time. And so when we take away that what was happening, what I understand that has happened is that the board chair themselves has raised it with the broadcasting minister, which goes to the heart of what Marian is saying, is that they're inappropriate conversations to have. What do we know? This board chair has been in place for about 4 months. So this is the actual thing that we need to look at.
I would just add that TVNZ was very clear. I watched Simon Mersip's story tonight. They covered this story. He made it clear that TVNZ's own editorial decisions were made as to the second story, and that they made that decision off their own bat. So that was their position on that.
Yeah, Marian?
I think there's a real difference between having those discussions, even blessed politicians or business people or whatever ringing up and complaining about a story. That happens all the time, I would imagine, and not just politicians. But it's a difference when it's the board to the minister. That begins to be a power imbalance that goes on, and it's also off the record. You can't see it. It's happening under the desk sort of style, and I just find that as dangerous. And I certainly accept. I mean, can you remember Helen once got really cross with somebody and whipped out all the plugs and stormed out of the meeting? And I think she was PM at the time. But that was not a complaint behind closed doors from one to the other.
I would just say this too, Wallace, quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, we are in an election year.
Yeah.
These things become more heightened, obviously, in an election year. But we're also in an environment of social media and of highly polarised politics, and you throw. People are very heated up and emotional, and have opinions and they express them on the media. And it's the media's job, particularly public broadcasters. We have to be vigilant. We have to stick to our principles of fairness, of balance, of objectivity, of correcting mistakes when we make them and working on trust, because it is absolutely critical. And so you've got to be mindful of your blind spots and you've got to be constantly reassessing them.
Kia ora all. I really appreciate that, and you'll hear more about that tomorrow, of course. It is 9 away from 8. You are on the Whip, loving your company. Great feedback too, by the way. And we are with Holly Bennett, Corin, Dann, and former Wellington Central MP, former Minister Marian Hobbs. Now, to this. Our Whip quiz, again. What former government minister... I've got to play it. I have to, don't I, really? Was also a quiz show host on a show like It's Academic. Have a listen.
Which word beginning with O is the general term for any living creature or plant?
Orgasm.
Correct.
There you go. All right. So Matt is joining us. Hello, Matt.
G'day, Wallace. How are you?
Very, very well. What did you make of that?
Well, it brings back lots of childhood memories. Watching people who you hold up as being really smart, but because they got on TV answering quiz shows. But,
to be fair, I think that was just one mistake. I mean, a big one, but it was one mistake of otherwise illustrious on-screen career. The point is, who was it?
Well, it was Lockwood Smith.
Yes.
And he actually became the Speaker of the House and had to wrangle MPs, and I'm not sure which was the easier task.
Good on you. Hey, nice to have you on, Matt.
Yeah, thanks. It's I love your show, Wallace. It's my evening listening as I'm driving to and from work, and home from work, and I think we're really well served by you and your colleagues on national radio.
Oh, that's so kind of you. I'll clip that and send it to the board. Matt, just joking. Just joking. All right, kia ora. All right, now it's 7 away from 8. Now tensions are running high between Auckland Mayor Wayne Brown and Housing Minister Chris Bishop. The government plans to increase the number of homes in the city by 2 million, which later became 1.6. Hard pill to swallow. Chris Bishop has written to the mayor asking him to spell out the council's plans for housing intensification, but Wayne Brown is refusing to respond, saying it would be a waste of resource. Marian, this is really heating up, that sort of that tension, I guess, between central government and to what extent should they put the oar into cities such as the super city. What do you make of this?
I don't totally understand all the details when I was trying to read the story about the maps and
it's
all that sort of thing.
The maps, yes.
Yeah, the blessed maps.
Push the button.
I also suspect that there's quite a lot of political stuff happening from local MPs, but there is a real problem. Central government should set standards, and I'm going to use something from environment. In environment, we still have the National Environment Standard on air quality. We set the standard about how many things per air should be floating around, and the regional and local government actually puts that into practice and applies it to their particular area, their nor'west winds, their inversion, all those different issues that go in there, and they monitor at that level. And I think that is the lovely thing. Central government should be setting the standards about how much housing they want. Okay?
Yes.
But it should be worked out within. For God's sake, Auckland has huge problems with its sort of rivers and streams all flowing around the place and possibility of rising up and flooding. There are all sorts of issues out there. And I think they should be the ones that know that, not central government. Or otherwise, dearest people, you're going to have a bloody huge central government.
Right. Holly Bennett, well, you'd work across sectors with both central and regional. And what's to what extent should central government really weigh in and say, give us the right maps, please? And Wayne Brown goes, I'm not going to. That costs money.
Well, to be fair to everyone in this, I don't think it's about maps, and I don't think that Minister Bishop has asked for maps. I think it's been interpreted that way. And from what I see, he's asked for an outline of the approach. And I do think that we've sort of lost the art of cheeky politics in New Zealand. So here's some free advice to the Auckland Council and the Mayor, if you're listening. You could respond with 12 words which says, we will make changes and some areas or suburbs will be affected. Because that responds to the minister's request.
Oh, nice.
And actually gives you scope to then think about how you're going to do it. So there's some free advice. I do think that we could think about actually being a little bit more, a bit cheeky with how we respond.
I think
to
the worry here, I actually have a lot of sympathy for what Chris Bishop is trying to do here and that 2 million figure. I know people thought it was ridiculous, but actually this is about abundance. This is about stopping future housing shortages in the future and making sure that houses remain affordable. And I think the thrust was right. The danger here is that I think the local government, Wayne Brown and co, they feel that the Cabinet still has to approve this legislation which will enact the plan and that there might be some Auckland MPs who, object to some part of this, or if not the maps, the areas. That seems to be the accusation. But Chris Bishop is adamant this is a cabinet decision, and he just needs to, they need to make a decision, and it goes through. But that's the fear. But look, I think it's cross-party. The desperate need. Auckland was so stuffed for housing, and we've finally kind of fixed it. And they need to get this through, even if it's only 1.4 or 1.6 million homes planned for, so that a future generation might actually be able to own a home.
Kia ora, team. All right, just finally on the whip tonight. Now, so most Kiwis oppose the idea of joining Australia poll shows. So 65% oppose it. This was David Farrell's idea. He wrote it up in the Post and it went gangbusters. He said, look, statehood could give New Zealand greater security, economic clout. Marian Hobbs.
Oh, gosh.
No, listen close. Would you be keen on David Farrell's idea to join Australia?
No. But I've got some quite sensible reasons, I think. Well, one is we're entering as a poor cousin, okay? We'd be one state, just another state, and then, and this quite seriously because of a trip I did through the centre of Australia recently, what of Te Tiriti? I don't think Australia has got a great reputation, actually, with its own Indigenous people. That would worry me hugely.
Okay. Holly Bennett, think of the economic costs. Think of our access to health care, our salaries. What do you reckon?
Well, can we bring it back to one of our national sports, rugby, too? How do we get through that? There's so many things here that we actually need to think about.
Never thought about that.
I wrote a couple of words. Great topic. Terrible idea. Not interested at all.
Okay, all right. Finally, Corin, Dann.
Well, I'll just
the rugby
say
one
this,
is a good one.
Putting my soon-to-be business editor's hat on. Yeah. I mean, their official cash rate is 3.85%, I think, and ours is 2.25%. So they might be worrying about inflation a bit more than we would be. I mean, we would be stuffed because, we might have to put up with the interest rates for the whole of Australia when we actually needed them to be lower, for example, and that wouldn't serve our interests. So there you go.
Okay. And finally, Corin, would you slowly grow into love with Aussie rules football?
I quite like Aussie rule football. I'd just say, they got the state of origin that we just create something like that, I suppose, if we did merge, but no.
But not underarm bowling.
Okay.
No, not on.
Right.
No,
controversial.
That's a hard no. All right. Hey, look, love the show. Thank you so much, Marian Hobbs. Thank you for that. Get a nice glass of water for you. You've been a dream, as have you, Holly Bennett and Corin Dann. Kia ora to you all. A big thanks to my producers, Tessa Guest and Jose Barbosa, and stick around because the great show with Emile Donovan at night is up just after the news.